Well, that's all right then, because is it is now midnight in Paris. I am Mama, and the cafe is open. And it's Sunday night. We're all getting those Monday morning vibes. And unfortunately, I may not help an awful lot with that because I've got a couple of moans. I've got a couple of records that need setting straight. And I will come to Don Lemon in the fullness of time. But first, I'm going to do them in chronicle order as they happened. Nothing else, not to do with importance, not to do with anything else, just which happened first and which annoyed me first this week. And while there are a lot of things that annoy me this week, a lot of them to do with the orange squatter in the White House, there were two that felt more personal. One felt extremely personal, and one felt a little bit personal because I'm just about having it up to here with Hey Summer, with our media, the mainstream media, trying to twist things and gaslight us into believing things that aren't actual facts. I'm tired of our politicians using lies, falsehoods, misstatements, and general bollocks to try and gain some political ground. Hey, Amy, it's just not acceptable. If I were queen for a day, not that I would be, because we think maybe monarchies had its run and we might want to think about doing things differently. But if I were in charge for a day, I would make two things punishable by death, and two things only, because I do not believe in the death penalty. I have very clear views on the death penalty. That I can expand on them, but very simply, it's not my job to decide who lives and dies. It's not anybody's job to decide who lives and dies. If one type of killing people is bad, then all types of killing people is bad. So let's just not. But I could make an exception. Two things. One, if politicians lie to us. Two, if the media knowingly lie to us. And then I think we'd be fine. To be honest, I think that would cut crime massively, because we wouldn't be being stirred up into a frenzy, being told who we're supposed to hate, being told it's that group of people over there who are responsible for all your life problems, when we really know it's that bunch over there who own the media company who are telling us it's that group over there. But enough of that. Let's get to the specifics. So the first one is the media heavy one. Oh, thank you, Amy. It is irresponsible at a time of war for the media to either both sides a situation or to platform people giving out incorrect, misinformed, and just plain bollocks information. It is massively, massively irresponsible, and it wouldn't be allowed under my watch. And I would like to set the record straight, because I'll put my cards on the table, as I will for the second topic. I was a fan of Keir Starmer long before he was involved in politics, back when I was a Tory voter. Yep, I'm afraid so. I was. And I don't apologise, because I genuinely believed that when I voted for them, that the things they were saying would be best for the country. I even voted for them when I knew they would not be best for me personally, but I still believed they would be best for the country. Now, I could be wrong. I could have been wrong every time. I don't know. It's hard to know when you get lied to all the time, but that doesn't matter. I genuinely believed that they had the nation's interests at heart. And at that time, Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party in the UK, was the Director of Public Prosecutions. So he was like where the buck stops in deciding what crimes get prosecuted. And I, big true crime fan, so I heard an awful lot of his perspective. I don't know how, I don't know why. I just know that's where I came across Keir Starmer, and I thought, well, you sound like a thoroughly decent bloke who's got his head screwed on right and genuinely cares about people and getting shit done. And then I lived through an era of Jeremy Corbyn being the leader of the Labour Party in the not too distant past. And if you're very far left in the Labour Party, you thought Jeremy Corbyn was all that and a bag of chips. He really was best thing since sliced bread. I did not feel that way. I felt he was incredibly divisive, and I wasn't sure how we were going to get any closer to undoing the damage that was being done by our government if we were going to isolate. Oh, sorry, didn't realize my microphone was the wrong one. I hope that sounds better. If we were going to isolate whole groups of people, if we were going to turn off one group at the expense of another group's support, that's not how you build consensus. That's not how you unify a country. And I'm fed up with division. It's hurting us. It's hurting us all, and it's got to stop. So probably I would never have voted Labour with Jeremy Corbyn as their leader. But when I saw this guy, this decent public servant who I had respect for, I thought, I can listen to what you're saying. I listened to what Jeremy Corbyn was saying until the point where I could no longer listen to his divisive rhetoric. That's all. I'm sure a lot of the things he believed in are really, really good, decent policies. But he was too divisive. He wasn't going to bring the whole country along with him. And I personally believe that that is necessary in a politician. It is very reminiscent of how Trump got voted in. And I can see how Trump got voted in, Laura. And I've listened to people recently talking about how disenfranchised certain parts of the country felt, how they believed that all politicians were the same, that Washington was a swamp, it was dishonesty and corruption and backhanders and pocket filling going on by all politicians. So if anybody, if Jeffrey Dahmer had stood up and said, I could do it differently. I could do it differently from all of the others. I would be interested to hear what they've got to say. I would stop being interested when I realized they were a big fat fucking liar, but he loves the poorly educated. I'm very, very blessed and fortunate to have been given a high level of education and critical thinking skills to think, that doesn't sound entirely right. I'm going to go and look into that in a little more detail. Oh no, that was a big fat stinky lie. And if you lie to me enough times, I just might not be able to trust you on other things. So we might have to diverge. And yeah, you lost me. So, oh, where was I going? Yes. So Keir Starmer, got a lot of time for him. Don't think he's doing everything perfectly. Think he's been unnecessarily vague and evasive on certain things. I think he could be more full-throated on support for Europe and what that might mean for us and what options we've got, because Jesus Christ, that was an act of self-sabotage if ever I saw one. And I voted for it. I voted for us to be worse off because I believed the shit I was being told. And I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to say that. I believed what I was being told and I made the wrong decision. And from that point on, I have never looked back. And I have really started to find out where the truth is in what I'm being told. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's really, really hard, but I try my best. And I think Keir Starmer is somebody that genuinely is in the job for the right reasons, especially all you have to do is hold him up next to Boris Johnson. And you can see in it for me, in it for thee. And I'm going with in it for thee 100% of the time, even if I disagree with your methods. If I think you genuinely want to make my country and the lives of my fellow humans better, you're going to get my support. Not necessarily going to get my vote, but you will get my support, my respect, and I will listen to you. And that's all I can offer. So, Keir Starmer, doing a pretty good job. The last not budget announcement, the last growth figures were better than expected. Of course, the media will twist that into something or other, but it was. We were doing okay before all this nonsense kicked off. And we all know what I'm talking about when I say this nonsense. Yeah. So, specifically in relation to this nonsense, I think he's doing a fantastic job. And when I say fantastic, I don't mean that he's like showing some superhuman skills. I mean, he is analyzing the situation. He is checking the letter of the law, as you would expect from a former director of public prosecutions, and he is acting accordingly. He's not being bullied or barracked into choosing a particular course of action because them over there are saying he should, or them over there are saying he shouldn't be doing the other. He's consulting with his cabinet and the experts, much to the orange squatters' horror, who genuinely seems to think that once you get the top job, that's it. All power is now yours. Oh God, it's going to come as a horrible shock if anybody ever tells him that's not quite how it works. Please preface what you are being told. What I'm being told about what, Laura? Sorry, I may have continued on before I read that. That was probably in relation to something. But anyway, yes. So, Keir Starmer, current Prime Minister, doing a solid job on the current world situation we find ourselves in. But I did have a wobble. I can't lie. When I heard around a similar time, in fact, I heard first that the UK were now giving permission to the US to use UK territory in a less than defensive way. So we'd originally agreed to a defensive way. I'll go through the timeline, but we'd kind of upped the ante a little bit. And then I heard that Iran had managed to launch missiles capable of reaching British territory on Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands, where there is a joint UK-US military base. And if you want to know more about the Chagos Islands, just ask Donny, because he's got a lot to say about it. And interestingly, as I found out from Anthropic's lovely AI tool, Claude, and then subsequently saw on a news report with a little circle and then circles going out of it, and then a line from Iran to Diego Garcia, and then make a big circle. And that big circle covers all of Southern Europe and reaches right to the UK. So that's nice. That's nice to know. Yes, Iran could now reach us if these missiles that they sent in the direction of the Chagos Islands are indicative of other missiles that they have. Of course, they can't reach as far as the USA. Well, they can, but not. I checked with Claude. They can't reach Mar-a-Lago and they can't reach 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, unfortunately. So, yeah. But maybe we can persuade him to go visit somewhere, anywhere. I mean, Iraq looks nice at this time of year. Maybe? No? Just a thought, just a thought, just a suggestion. But so I was, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So Keir Starmer says, yeah, you can use our territory to be a little bit more aggressive, and then Iran retaliate and try and get us in Diego Garcia. But that's not quite what happened. As we know from previous strikes back and forth in this very conflict, when missiles land is quite some time after the missiles are launched, and it can look like a missile landing is in retaliation to a comment made, where actually the comment made was in retaliation to the missile being launched, and then after all of that, the missile lands. And that's what happened in this case. I will elaborate for you. So, the argument in 30 seconds, in brief. Starmer spent 3 weeks resisting Trump's pressure to let US use British bases for offensive strikes on Iran. I 100% agree, support, and am fully behind that. He said no repeatedly. Then Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, which is British sovereign territory and has British personnel on it, before Starmer made Friday's announcement. He didn't cave to Trump. He responded to an act of war against the United Kingdom, our territory, and our people. There is a difference, and I have the receipts, because that's what you expect, and that's what you demand, and that's what you deserve. So the timeline in order. 28th of February. We all know what happened, but I'll remind anyone who's joining us late. And by joining us late, I don't mean joining us late in the show. I mean joining us late in life, because I think we all know what happened on the 28th of February. So the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Failure. Sorry, not Epic Failure, Epstein Fury. No, not Epstein Fury. What's it called? Operation Complete and Total Disaster. No, Epic Fury. That's what the US called it. Apparently Israel called it something differently, because why would you want to be on the same page in the same war on which you are the same side? No. So the joint strikes on Iran begin. Starmer is asked for permission to use British bases for American offensive actions. Same day, he refuses. He says British planes are in the sky in a defensive capacity only, and that he needs to be legally satisfied before any offensive use of UK bases. Trump says he's not happy, and he says it a lot. In fact, he says it more than anyone's ever said they're not happy ever before. And didn't we hear about it? 1st of March, a couple of days later, well, next day, I think February only had 28 days this year. Starmer authorizes limited use. So the US were given permission to use RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia for defensive operations against Iranian missile sites that threaten British lives or British interests only. So if we're being threatened as Brits, we're okay with Americans using our bits and pieces to help defend us. That's fine. Not offensive action. Not opening the Strait of Hormuz. 3rd of March, Trump decides to really twist the knife in on Starmer with his "this is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with" comment. No, and you're no FDR, mate. 19th of March, a couple of weeks later. So we know we've had the back and forth, and Iran are basically telling Israel and United States, "Oh, hello, we have a say now. You know, when you bombed the shit out of us, that gave us an opinion, and ours may not be the same of you as yours. So if you decide, okay, that's finished, we're all done, we won, we might disagree, and we might carry on with the big bomby stuff." Yeah. So there's that. Hey, Anna. So yes, on the 19th of March, the UK joined 21 nations, probably most of them former US friends and allies. Amy. Hey, Anna. Um, in a joint statement condemning Iran's closure of the Straits of Hormuz. And they condemned attacks on civilian infrastructure in the region and called for an immediate comprehensive moratorium. So that was the UK government's position on the 19th of March. On the 20th of March, last Thursday, or Friday, I forget which one, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper called Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and she warned Iran directly against targeting UK bases, UK territories, or UK interests. Um, Iran's foreign minister responded on Telegram because apparently that's how we do diplomacy nowadays, on social bloody media. Even my 12-year-old knows that social media is not a good place to deal with difficult problems. It's not me, is it? It's not just me. We all know this, right? Right. So he says these actions will definitely be considered as participation in aggression, and I quote. But Iran has been explicitly warned by the UK. None of your bomby stuff towards us or we'll be cross. And we might have to tut loudly. So they were warned. Then Friday, Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, British territory, British personnel. 1 missile fails mid-flight, and the US warship manages to fire an SM-3 interceptor at the second. So neither of these 2 missiles hit the base, hit Diego Garcia. But Iran has just attacked the UK, and that happened before Starmer made his announcement, which he then went on to make after he'd met with his ministers, and he authorized the expanded use of UK bases. So US could now conduct defensive operations to degrade missile sites and capabilities being used to attack the ships in the Strait of Hormuz now. So now we're giving them a landing spot, basically closer to Iran, where the US can conduct their own defensive operations to attacks going on in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's the escalation. Now we're saying yes, if they're being naughty in the Straits of Hormuz, we can defend against that, and you can use our bases to defend against that, not to go in and bomb shit out of them. Okay, so just want to make that clear. So the timeline in direct source quotes. Iran attacked before the UK announcement. So the attack took place before the British government announced that the United States could use British bases to launch strikes on Iranian sites, courtesy of Euronews. Receipt 2. Iran attacked British sovereign territory. Iran's reckless attacks lashing out across the region and holding hostage the Strait of Hormuz are a threat to British interests and British allies. RAF jets and other UK military assets are continuing to defend our people and personnel in the region. And that is a Ministry of Defence statement to CNBC on the 21st of March. Receipt 3. Starmer had previously said no to offensive use. Prime Minister Keir Starmer initially refused to allow the US military to use British bases to strike Iran on February the 28th. That's reported in Time magazine. Receipt 4. Starmer changed his position because of Iranian aggression, not because of Johnny Orange. Starmer modified his stance after Iran conducted strikes on British allies across the Middle East. That's from Defensive News on the 20th of March. Receipt 5. Iran revealed a weapons capability beyond previously declared range. Obviously, because they never told us that they'd got big shouty rockets that could reach all the way to the Chagos Islands. And Euronews reported the incident has revealed an Iranian missile capability greater than previously estimated. Diego Garcia lies around 4,000 kilometers from Iran's coastline, double the 2,000-kilometer range that Tehran had always stated officially. Stuck where? Stuck in the Chagos Islands? Receipt 6. UK energy bills, the direct consequences of Iranian blockades. And yes, I know it's not just the UK, but this is just my perspective from the UK and from the things that Starmer has to take into consideration. Oh, in Iran, God, I don't know, Amy. Oh, I don't even want to think about it. Iran, Lebanon, Israel, they're all getting absolutely battered. And the rest of the Gulf not doing too great either. So, according to ITV News from a Cornwell Institute analysis, British household energy bills are projected to jump by £332 per year from July. I make that about $350 odd a year. Oil prices spiked 7% in a single day to $114 a barrel on Thursday before dropping to $109 on Friday. The Ofgem, there are energy regulators, price cap for July-September is now forecast at £1,973 per year, a 20% rise on the April cap. The energy cap is the price at which nobody must pay above. And it's not exactly generous, let's say, but it goes up and down so that to try and stop people being exploited by the big energy companies. I don't know how well it does. Receipt 7. Iran explicitly threatened the UK the day before and was warned. The Foreign Office quote is, the Foreign Secretary also warned Iran against targeting UK bases, territory or interests directly. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi responded, these actions will definitely be considered as participation in aggression. So, looks like the US and Israel are not the only ones making up their own rules. What do you say? Okay, fair enough. We'll deal with it. I mean, what else can you say? You can't say that. No, 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 Iran, but we didn't. If you look at it, well, we actually no. That we just got to get on with it. The political trap, which a lot of the UK media and big shouty talky people who like to be all over the telly box are falling into, is they want to frame this as Starmer caving to Trump. The receipts, as I've clearly shown, say otherwise. Starmer said no to Trump for 3 weeks. The sequence of events was Iran fired at us first, then Starmer acted. The uncomfortable irony is that Trump had also been pressuring Starmer about the wider Chagos deal and whether we're going to hand the Chagos Islands back, publicly attacking him for considering giving away Diego Garcia. But then Iran attacked that island. You know, it handed Starmer the legal and moral justification he needed to go ahead and accede to Trump's request. It also proved at the same time that Diego Garcia is strategically vital and can't be quietly given back So maybe Iran did Starmer a backhanded favour. They probably didn't mean to. But Kemi Badenoch, who is an awful woman, in my opinion, is the leader of the opposition, the current Conservative Party leader. And she called it the mother of all U-turns. She is wrong. It is the mother of all forced hands. There is a difference between turning around because someone shouted at you and turning around because someone just fired a missile at your house. So that's where we are. And I am relieved in some senses because at least the guy I thought was a pretty good guy still seems to be doing the right thing. And obviously, I'm terrified because seems to indicate that we're in the firing line now. So, yay, happy days. Thanks, Donny. Anywho, shall we move on? It's past. Look, it's almost like I time these things right down to the minute, isn't it? I mean, I don't, obviously. It's way more luck than judgment. But I do need to speak to you about Don Lemon. Now, I've got a clip to show you, the clip that upset me so much, but I will quickly lay out my store as far as Don Lemon is concerned. As a personality, he is not my cup of tea. As a journalist, I think he is fantastic. I watch him at least once a day because he brings the information that I am interested in. Were he to invite me down to the pub for a drink, I would decline. We wouldn't get on. And that's okay. That's partly why it's so great, because it's not about the personality, it's about the message. And whether I think he's a great laugh, he's fun, he'd be cool to hang out with, is irrelevant when he never offered me any of that. He offered to bring me unfiltered, unbiased news coverage. And I feel that's what I get. And I will continue supporting him while that's what he's doing. I will continue standing up for him when he's unjustly persecuted, like I did back when the Church in St. Paul incident was front page news, and like I will continue to do if this stupid lawsuit persists. Hopefully, somebody in the DOJ will have good sense and think, not sure this is the best use of our time when Rome is burning, quite literally. Anywho, what I want to talk about is something that he said recently. It would have been Friday or Saturday, and I found it genuinely upsetting. And I want to be clear up front. I agree with the broader point he was making. Hegseth, dear old Party Pete, his brand of aggressive, performative, ultra zealous Christianity is alarming, to say the least. It's being weaponized politically, and it absolutely deserves scrutiny, amongst an awful lot more. We've covered Hegseth in depth on the show. If you haven't seen it, please go check that episode out. We had fun. So on the subject of this ultra religiosity that Pompous Pete is spouting, Don and I are fully aligned. But, and it is a big but, even bigger than Donny's butt. Sorry, you're all imagining that now, aren't you? I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. Then he went somewhere that I can't let go. He made a leap, a lazy leap, in my opinion. And in making that leap, he said something that I think is not only factually wrong, it's dangerous. Not dangerous in a call the FBI kind of a way, dangerous in a someone who is suffering might hear what he said, trust him, believe him, and not pick up the phone when they need to, kind of a way. So I'm going to play you the clip and try not to, press the wrong X and lose everybody. So bear with me. I'm going to play you the long clip because what's his name? The guy off MS Now, Lawrence O'Donnell, he sets up the context extremely well, just because I want to be fair to Don Lemon and where he was coming from. So let's set up the context. Bear with me and we will have a listen to what they have to say. Hopefully, I've got it to the right place and we don't have to worry about adverts.
On Sunday, the leader of the largest Christian denomination in the world said this: on behalf of the Christians of the Middle East and all men and women of goodwill, I appeal to those responsible for this conflict: cease the fire, reopen paths of dialogue. Violence can never lead to the justice, stability, and peace that people are waiting for. And today, the leader of no one, who has the legal title of Secretary of Defense, but fraudulently refers to himself as the Secretary of War, said this:
may Almighty God continue to bless our troops in this fight. And again, to the American people, please pray for them every day, on bended knee, with your family, in your schools, in your churches, in the name of Jesus Christ.
In the name of Jesus.
Gisela Ambassadora Gold.
Bloody adverts.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creator.
Okay,
in the name of Jesus Christ
move on to
means
Don's
that the
reaction.
misguided fanatic, who is by far the most incompetent Secretary of Defense in history, does not want the prayers or good wishes or anything else from the 38% of Americans who are not Christian. Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense does not want one Jewish prayer said in support of Donald Trump's war, not one. He very obviously does not want a Muslim prayer spoken anywhere in the United States in support of Donald Trump's war, on bended knee or not. And he does not want the prayer of Christians who are not literally on their knees. I used to kneel down for most of the prayers that we did when I was an altar boy in Catholic elementary school, but the priests didn't. Catholic priests, who live an even more religious life than Pete Hegseth, do most of their public praying standing up, which is apparently unacceptable to the religiosity of Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is the first Secretary of Defense in history who thinks he can define for Americans the proper way of praying, the proper way of praying for a war, on bended knee, in the name of Jesus Christ. There are some choices here. One is that Pete Hegseth doesn't mean any of it, not a single word. He wouldn't be the first fraudulently public religious person. It is possible that he uses excessive and false and invented religiosity to cover for a life prior to this of infidelity in his previous marriages that have led him to his third marriage and a pledge to stop what appeared to be his uncontrollable drinking so that he could be confirmed as Secretary of Defense. That's a possibility. If you're taking your religious direction from Pete Hegseth, you are lost. And we can only hope that the American military is not taking orders from Pete Hegseth. We can only hope that he is the fake figurehead at the Department of Defense.
Here's the thing.
And here's the thing where Don loses me. So bear with me.
This is the only time. Just pause it, please. Two things. One, the only time that I ever think about being in corporate media and I miss my evening show is when I listen to a monologue like this that I used to give at the top of the show, because Lawrence O'Donnell and I are just right simpatico sinking. I'm gonna have to call Lawrence and see if we can get Lawrence on the show. Because Lawrence is one of the people, and maybe one of the only ones really, who's really, really telling the truth and is on the mark and is not giving false equivalence and fake balance. He's just telling it straight. Some things are objectively bad. What this administration is doing is bad for everyone, bad for the country, bad for the world. And if there is any indication of it, there could not be a starker example or indication of it than the war that we're in, and how he is wrapping himself in religiosity and religion. We pray for whatever. Now, let me tell y'all something.
Here we go.
As someone who's written a book on religion and God, as someone who went to Catholic school and did Bible study and went to a Baptist church on Sunday, Catholic school during the week. So, I know. And as a person of faith, let me tell you that, and also Donald talked about his excessive alcohol, that is what he's doing is very difficult to go to. That's what you got. My thing is that I'm always weary of people who only come to, not that it's a bad, but you should just be mindful of people who come to religion or faith because they went through a tough time and they were trying to be pulled out of something, and the only thing that they could grab onto is religion, and then that's how they learn religion and faith, is through that terrible thing that they did or bad behavior. Because there are myriad ways to come to that, but just be mindful of the motivation and the actions of people who come to faith and then start to wear it on their sleeves. And
Now, as you would imagine, oh no. Oh, I'm so sorry. So you didn't get to hear any of that clip? Ah. Okay. To save wasting any time, I will tell you what the clip said. Can you hear me okay? Let me turn this down. Is that better? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So I will explain to you briefly, and then that's where the clip comes from, and you can go watch the clip if you want to see the actual receipts. Sorry about that. Okay. So Lawrence O'Donnell begins by, Don Lemon begins by reading what the actual Pope has said on the subject. Then Lawrence O'Donnell, they play Pete Hegseth, what he's got to say on the subject, and how he's, begging all Christians to get down on their knees and pray because, I don't know. Lawrence O'Donnell has taken issue with that you're supposed to be a country where religion and state are separate, where any and all and none, no religions are equal under the Constitution of the United States. And clearly, Pete Hegseth is not asking for Muslim prayers or Sikh prayers or Buddhist prayers or humanist prayers or pagan prayers. And he doesn't even want Christian prayers if you're not down on your knees. And O'Donnell went on to say how when he was an altar boy, yes, he did pray on his knees, but the priests delivering the prayers were standing. And he's not going to take... Yeah, he did, Genevieve. He's not going to take lessons in how to pray from Party Pete, and I don't blame him. And we are 100% together up until that point. Well, I'm 100% together with what Lawrence O'Donnell had to say. And then Don Lemon gave his perspective on it, and he gave his credentials as somebody who attended Catholic school, Bible study, wrote a book on religion. So he knows a lot of what he speaks. But what I'm pretty sure, unless I'm very much mistaken in my research, that Don Lemon doesn't have direct experience of, is what he then went on to say, which is that Hegseth reminded him of the kind of religiosity that recovered alcoholics cling on to or grab hold of as an alternative to drinking when they go to AA. And that is not my experience of AA. And I think it's dangerous to even mention AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, he fucking did, Laura. It really upset me. So let me go through it. Okay. So if you've been listening to my show for any period of time, you know, I don't just come on here and it's not all about me being vulnerable and woe is me and my life stories. That's not what I do here. Yes, you saw how the death of Luna really affected me, and that hurt me, and that needed to be shown because, you know, she'd been on the show. What, I couldn't just disappear her without comment. But other than that, I don't think we've really talked about how I feel on a deep level about, you know, emotional stuff. You know, sometimes people make me angry, but that's more on a commentary level. So I don't perform pain for content. But this time it is important to let you in on my credentials. So Don Lemon gave his credentials, very, very good they are too, very sound credentials. But my credentials for this conversation, it's not a medical degree, it's not a research paper, it's just 22 years almost in May of sobriety. 22 years of not picking up a drink despite having a condition that compels me to drink and compels me to continue drinking despite all the consequences. And the program that helped me get there and stay there and be alive today is Alcoholics Anonymous. So when misleading information is given or just asides, comments, quips about Alcoholics Anonymous are given by people who clearly have no direct knowledge of what Alcoholics Anonymous is, what it's about, what the 12-step program means, how it means to recover following a 12-step program, I need to come in and I need to add some context. I'm not saying that he is wrong, that Pete Hegseth has become this nationalist Christian through desperation. He might have. I've seen it. I've seen it in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've also seen it in every church I've ever been to. And I suspect if I visited religious establishments of other religions, I'd probably see it there too. But that is not what people get from AA who go to AA and do what is suggested, because my experience is different. And the experience of a lot of people is different to that. And I just wanted to put forward that side of the picture, not even the argument, just that side of the picture. So anyone, I don't have quite the same following as Don Lemon. I'll admit it. I'm not obtuse to the fact that he has a few more viewers than I do, and that's fine. But what he doesn't have is my perspective. and I want to put my perspective out there, cast aside my anonymity to say, this is my experience of Alcoholics Anonymous and sobriety and my life now and the 12-step program and all the rest of it. That's all. Okay? AA saved my life. That's the short version. And not metaphorically, not, oh, it was really helpful. It actually saved my actual life. I would not be here today if I hadn't been forced to attend AA meetings and through some gift of desperation started to listen and at some point set aside all my brilliant ideas that had got me to that place in exchange for just trying out a few of the things that were suggested to me by the people who seem to be living happy, joyous, and free lives without alcohol, who from their stories, which they told with absolute sincerity, and I believed, sounded like that's not how it had always been for them. So let me continue. Genevieve, I'm without even reading it, I'm pretty sure I know what you're saying. And I want to stress, and I will try and stress, that I am not saying people don't come to AA, get all religious, and then start beating up other people with it. I will cover that. Of course they do. But he didn't offer the other side of the coin. And I find that harmful because AA has got such a horrible reputation as being a cult. So let me whiz through because Glenn will be here soon. Okay. So what did he get wrong? So point one, AA is not a religious program. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that he got it wrong, so to speak. It's not a religious program. What AA actually is, because I think a lot of people have a cultural image of it that bears very little resemblance to my experience. The AA preamble, which is read aloud at the start of many meetings, is explicit. It says AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Not allied, any sect. That includes Christianity. That includes every religion. It's not a loophole or a small print caveat. It's foundational to what the fellowship is, because we can't be excluding people who don't believe in God because they will go and die if they've got no other option. And I'm also not saying AA is the only way to get sober. It's the only way that worked for me. That's all. So does AA use the language of spirituality? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Step 2 asks us to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And that's quite a big step, trying to accept that the way you're behaving is insane. But if insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, then we were absolutely Looney Tunes insane off the scale. Step 12, right at the end of the steps, it does speak of a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And I took real issue with that in the beginning. I obviously, being a smart person, before I'd even done step 1, I skipped right down to step 12 and thought, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, fuck off. You don't know me. You don't know that I'm going to have a spiritual awakening. I might not. So I stuck with the program just to prove that by the time I got to step 12, I would not have a spiritual awakening. That's not what happened. But that's fine. One of those times when I'm very glad to have been wrong. So it on the AA website, it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And that's the thing that I feel like he glossed over, rather. It matters enormously, that higher power. You define it yourself. It can be God. It can be a thing you call God because that's a word that's easy for you to use. It can be a religious God. It can be the universe. It can be the AA group itself, the fellowship, the collective wisdom in the room or handed down over the decades. It can be nature, it can be whatever honest personal concept gives you access to humility and hope. It absolutely nowhere says it needs to be Christianity. So if Hegseth has got himself all ultra religious, that is not the fault of AA, the program. Now, it may well be the people in it that he's been around. It may well just be him himself. I don't know. I wasn't there on his journey. But the AA is not a Christian organization. It is not. Fact. When Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob founded AA back in Akron, Ohio in 35, they kept this deliberately vague so that nobody would be excluded and the program would be accessible to everyone. Atheists work the steps, agnostics work the steps, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, people of no faith at all work the steps and can get sober and stay sober. I was not religious when I came to AA, and I am still not religious, but I believe in God. And I didn't believe in God, and I'm glad I do now. I believe in some higher power that's taken the pressure off me having to run the whole of the world, because that was exhausting. The spiritual awakening described in step 12, it's not a conversion experience. That's not what happens. It's not being born again, but actual research published in peer-reviewed journals describes it as a gradual shift in perspective. One day realizing you haven't wanted a drink in a while, a slow re-emergence of hope. That's not Pete Hegseth with a Bible in one hand and an Uzi in the other. That's a broken human being finding their way back to their true selves. And that was my experience. And I think he kind of got the conflation backwards. So what I think actually happens from my lived experience, not studying religion, when someone comes into AA, you arrive desperate. I arrived desperate. It's not a cliche, it's a clinical reality. You arrive at the point where your life had become unmanageable. It's literally step one. And desperate people fall roughly into two groups from my observation. The first group are the people who are ready to listen, ready to be uncomfortable, ready to do the work, ready to face the hard truths. It is hard work. It was for me, and I'm glad it was because it stuck all these years. You have to take honest self-inventory. That doesn't mean self-deprecation. It means making an honest list of where you're doing good and where you really need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You need to think about where you need to make amends. What can you do to make reparations to people that you've harmed? You need to make constant and brutal personal accounts the whole time you're working the program. Step 10 is the maintenance steps, and it incorporates some of the things you do as a one-off earlier on in the steps into a daily ritual. And it's not like a daily ritual. It's about taking account, taking stock. Am I still following an honest program, or am I kind of going back to old ways? Because a relapse finishes with a drink. It does not start with a drink. It starts with the thinking and then the behaviors and then the drink. And it's too late then. That's why we take this frequent inventory to check. Are we still adhering to the principles that enabled us to live life on life's terms without a drink? That's all we need to do. So there are the second group, obviously. And there are others in between. But there are a very big second group, and they're the people who are desperate, but for a different reason. They desperately want a crutch. They want another thing to be able to lean on. They've had the crutch of alcohol removed forcibly by the consequences of their actions, and they need something to hang on to. And they'll hold on to anything with both hands, both legs, and their teeth if they can, without even examining what it is they're holding on to. They don't care. And these people sometimes latch on to the God language and the ritual of meetings, the social identity of belonging to a group, and they build a new dependency from it. It becomes their new addiction. And of course that happens. But that's not the program. That's not what's supposed to happen. You know, you go to school and some people bunk off and some people bully other people. You know, these things are not supposed to happen, but we're not going to ban school or say school's rubbish because some people get it wrong. We just have to keep telling people what the real message is and offering it to anyone who might need it or might find it helpful or might just want to give it a go because they've tried every fucking thing else. It's not what the program teaches that you have to become a Christian or ultra religious. You don't have to find any religion. One of my best friends in AA, who's probably about 40 years sober, is an absolute atheist and has felt no need to change that. And he's a great person. It's an individual misreading of the program when that happens. It's an individual who hasn't heard or hasn't wanted or hasn't been able to do the deeper work that a 12-step program asks for. It's that the 12 steps are not there to give you a new identity to hide behind. You know, I was a drunk, now I'm a recovered alcoholic. They're there to strip away all your hiding places and let you face the world naked. Not literally, that would be really unpleasant. So confusing some people misusing the program and misunderstanding the program with the program itself of recovery. It's like somebody misusing a hammer to hit themselves in the head with and then concluding hammers cause head injuries. Do you get me? Yes, that was happening. That does happen. When people misuse a thing, bad results can happen. But when used properly, hammers don't tend to cause head injuries. You with me? So, my worry is the rhetoric because it has consequences. And please, if you need to leave to go over to Glenn, then you do what you got to do. But I will continue for about 5 more minutes. So, when a public commentator, especially a credible, widely watched commentator, a commentator I respect, casually links AA to religious extremism in the shape of Pete Hegseth or psychological weakness, they're not just making a political point. They're potentially talking to someone who's sitting in their kitchen at 2 a.m., sober for 3 weeks, white knuckling it, wondering whether to call their sponsor. And if that person has absorbed the message that AA is just for religious nutters, or worse, it will turn you into a religious nutter, or it's just for people who want to swap one crutch for another, or it's a cult. Oh my God, if I had a quid for every time I was told it's a cult. Thankfully, I was well enough into drinking the Kool-Aid before I heard that it was a cult. But I thought it was a cult. Who am I kidding? I had no interest in going to AA. It's full of drunks. That's the danger. It's not abstract. It's not theoretical. It's real. I am sitting here nearly 22 years sober telling you the moment I stopped using alcohol to manage feelings I didn't know how to sit with, I needed help with that pain. AA gave me a room full of people who understood my pain. And not because we had the same political or religious beliefs, because they'd been where I'd been and they'd found a way out and they were offering to show me what they did because it worked for them and it might work for me. And that's it. That's the whole thing. A room full of people who've been there and are still standing. And how are they still standing? And data backs this up, by the way. The 2020 Cochrane Review, one of the most rigorous systematic analysis ever done on addiction treatment, found that AA participation produces abstinence rates of around 42% at 1 year, compared to roughly 35% for CBT and other clinical interventions. US Department of Veteran Affairs study found that people who attended AA without any other aftercare were sober at roughly double the rate of those who received no 12-step involvement at all. And whether you think they're big numbers or small numbers, you're wrong. They're people, their lives. Anyway, Hegseth is still the problem. He is a big problem for different reasons. So let me come back to Pete Hegseth, not because I want my defense of AA to be diminished in any way, but because I don't want my defense of AA to be read as a defense of him, because it absolutely is not. Hegseth's Christianity is a problem for specific documentable reasons that have nothing to do with AA. It's exclusionary, the exact opposite of AA. He said in public that he believes the US military should be explicitly Christian. It's being used to justify the purging of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from the armed forces. It's performative in ways that suggest it's more about cultural warfare than genuine faith. And critically, it sits alongside a pattern of personal behavior, including credible allegations of sexual assault and well-documented excessive alcohol use that suggests the Christianity being performed is armor, not conviction. That is a legitimate and important critique, and from what I can see, absolutely applies to Pete Hegseth. But that critique doesn't require, and it's not strengthened in any way by throwing AA under the bus. If anything, the most pointed observation about Hegseth and alcohol isn't that AA produced his zealotry. The recovery community that I'm part of has our own much sharper phrase for what Pete Hegseth may represent. He's a dry drunk. He's still an alcoholic, but he doesn't have his medicine. So he behaves very badly because he's in pain and he's found no alternative that works at easing the pain. So he's going to lash out because hurt people hurt people. He's someone who's removed the substance, but he hasn't done any of the work. He's still operating from the same fear, rage, and need for control that drove the drinking, just redirected. The Big Book of AA has described this pattern for nearly 90 years. It's not new. And it's got nothing to do with a well-worked 12-step program. Today, and this may be different tomorrow because I can stop working my program anytime I like. This me today at nearly 22 years sober, in control of all the difficulties I've got in my life. This is what a 12-step program of recovery worked hard looks like. Not pious Pete. So, Don Lemon, I agree with you about Pete Hegseth. I agree with you 100%. I disagree with you about AA, and I think the disagreement matters. And I would have preferred you hadn't mentioned it because I don't think it's relevant. The 12-step program at its best produces not zealots, but people who've looked at themselves unflinchingly, made amends for the harms that they've caused, which I don't believe Pete has, and committed to a daily practice of honesty and service to others. That is about as far away from Pete Hegseth's Christianity as it's possible to get. AA is not perfect. No human institution is. And yes, sometimes people misuse its language to build walls instead of bridges. I was told in my very early days that the 12-step program of recovery offers a bridge to normal living. And that's what I found to be true. I found a way to get back to the life that I'd pulled myself away from. You know, if you're a bad person, you're going to still be a bad person whether you drink or not. But a lot of us weren't bad people. We just behaved badly. And it was nice to find the nice me again. The program itself, as it's written, is practiced by millions of people around the world. And it's one of the most democratically spiritual, rigorously honest, and non-dogmatic paths to recovery ever devised. It belongs to no religion, no political party, no culture. It belongs to whoever needs it. And I'm still here. Nearly 22 years later, I'm still here. Sorry for those who, you know, that's a bit annoying. Yeah, I am still here 10 minutes, 11 minutes into Glenn's show. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please go. Anyone who's been kind enough to stay with me and now wants to dash over to Glenn. I'm just going to finish with an extract from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I find quite prayerful, but it's not a prayer because it's not a Christian organization, although we do use prayers from all different kinds of organizations. So if you would please, those of you who are staying for another moment or two, please join with me and think about the higher power in your life, or not. Just be still with your thoughts. These are the promises that were offered to me when I came into AA, and I have found them to be honest, true, and fulfilled for me. The promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And I thank whatever God or gods are up there for making me shut my mouth long enough to hear what I needed to hear. Oh, Laura said we think not. That's an AA thing when we're reading the promises. We all say that, but it doesn't matter who's reading the promises. But when we get to the bit, are these extravagant promises? We all say, we think not. Amen. And thank you, God. And thank you all. What an absolute pleasure this evening has been for me. And I'm sorry that I haven't kept on top of the conversation. I am certain that Genevieve was adding really important point of view, and I'm going to try and go back and read your contribution, Genevieve, and because I do appreciate it. And he is an embarrassment, and he's a very poor example of a recovered alcoholic and a Christian. In my opinion, he ain't neither. But it is time to move on to Glenn, or whatever it is that you have to do right now. Thank you so much for spending time with me. We have gone on, and I apologize for the clip. I will have to play around with the sound and get that working better. But thank you for bearing with me. For tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the cafe is now closed.